have a revenue crisis, that our revenue to GDP is low. That's what you hear every day. We don't get enough revenue. My answer to that is, it's wrong. Revenue, for you to generate revenue is like going to bank. You have to pay interest. Then you can get withdraw. You can't go to withdraw without paying it. And how does government pay it? It is the job of government to ensure and invest in economic growth and ensure, create job and employment which will allow people to come and pay taxes. You cannot have 100 million people living in poverty and you're expecting robust revenue. Where are you going to get it from? The number of people, if you use the standard, Nigeria is 200 million people. So the number of people that are supposed to be working, gainfully employed, if you use the world average of 50-60%, it's 120 million. But all of us know that today, the number of people that are gainfully employed and working in Nigeria is about 40 million. So you have about 60 to 70 million people unproductive. So they're not doing anything for you. So what you need to do is start pulling those people out of poverty, have a robust economic growth, and then you will be able to have the liquidity the government needs to function. How does government generate money everywhere is to ask questions, and if I may use just one situation, one country, to give you an example, a big country, let me not leave the Western world, America and Britain, and go to Asia, China. China finances its budget. Today, the last budget that followed was about 4 trillion. Out of this 4 trillion, 3.2 trillion came from taxes. 50% of that came from tax to micro, small businesses. And this segment is providing job, 60% of the job in China. Employed people in China is 800 million, so they are providing 540 million people. In fact, in urban areas, it's about 80%. So it's a simple thing that you need to inject and support the economy for economic growth, which will in turn make people, the more you're robust and more your economy is, the more you can earn from taxes and other incomes. That's how government can be liquid. Again, countries borrow money. They borrow money and invest. If you borrow for investment, which is what I'm saying before, you have an economic growth, which in turn brings in more liquidity and revenue. And my sister was saying how we're going to deal with the issue of, again, resources, because what you're saying is almost the same thing. How are you going to help with the issue of resources? With all this power, everything and all that, to be more specific, is that at least it's similar to what I had earlier said. You know, however, because you mentioned some specific areas like power, am I sure? Huh? Like you mentioned a specific area of power. Power is something everybody is worried about. It's a critical thing that this country has to be dealt with decisively. I know very well that the federal government of Nigeria, as a government today, have removed power from exclusive list to concurrent list. For me, I will go, and for the government, we will go further than that. We will actually go beyond that, because if you look at our power problem today, we have privatized generation and distribution. leaving the critical link between these two, transmission. That is where we have what you can call ineffective and problem that needs to be dealt with. So for me, the first thing I'll do is to ensure power is, one is to liberalize transmission. It is critical if you're going to deal with our power. When you do that, you're going to look at the power companies because the privatization, I don't want to go into the problem of it, but we can support the existing companies that are involved in power to ensure, one, what they are suffering today, to ensure that there's a dedicated gas supply, which is part of their problem today, gas to power, ensure that the generation, transmission, and distribution is properly aligned, have clear certainty of policy and regulatory environment, which is what President mentioned. There's no certainty of the regulatory environment for them to operate. You have policies from assault every day. You need to be clear. And they know this is what they are. Support them to have access to funding that is attractive and deal with some of the tax incentives. Ensure that you deal with immediately issue of embedded power, because you have to come up with some mix. Embedded power and renewable energy. We have to go with all facets. The issue of power will be an emergency that we have to deal with all means possible to ensure that we have power. And I have studied a lot of things. My sister, I was talking about issue of access to the resources to deal with this. You can actually do it involving the private sector aggressively. Government doesn't need to be entirely involved. When the government is going to be involved, like what happened in Egypt, they just give a sovereign guarantee. And that you can deal with when it comes to the issue of power. On how do you start dealing with the systems, which what they ask them, quite frankly, that is the core of the problem we face today. And that is why I say that what we are going to do entirely is to streamline governance to be responsive, transformative, and effective. What we have today, we are not lack of any, there's clearly well-studied, discussed plans to solve most of our problems as a nation. Documented. So I'm not saying I'm going to be there to be one Superman who is going to come with inventions or things that nobody knows about. What I say that is I'm going to ensure that they are implemented and follow the stipulated guidelines. And that is what is lacking. The political will to deal with issues that is not everywhere. The political will to follow the rule of law, the political will to have certainty of a regulatory environment that will attract investment, the political will to ensure that you deal with, like he mentioned, issue of oil theft. Who is stealing oil? People in government, period. Nobody here can steal oil. Nobody here can steal oil. For you to steal oil, So it's simple. These are having like issue of corruption. The reason why we're not doing well in corruption index is because of the same thing you asked, which I will comment. So the certainty is what I said I'm offering. The ability to do the right thing and ensure that it's done going forward from 2023. Thank you. I'll be very straightforward. On the exclusive list, let me probably start from the last question on the exclusive list. There's quite a number of things that is not supposed to be there. And that we can deal with as quickly as possible. In fact, it comes handy on what my sister is talking about, 100 days. I think these are the areas to start. There's things federal government don't need to be solely involved, agriculture, education. There's quite a number of them. But there are not things that I can say here and tell you, I'm going to just, but we're going to deal with it, decide as quickly as possible. On issue of insecurity, I think also, just like you found it and is in the Twitter space, I think there's enough answer to him in the Twitter space. If you go there, you'll see it. You know, and I can tell you, he mentioned even something that was not existing when I was in government. He called Bakassi people. Bakassi people have been gone far before I even came into government, showing somebody who doesn't have knowledge of what happened while I was there. So if people say, so he mentioned that wasn't the case. Let me tell you, whenever an evil come into government, come 2023, one thing that we must decisively and aggressively deal with is the issue of security. Insecurity is number one thing that is impacting Nigerian economic growth today. And you need to deal with it as quickly as possible. And I assure you, when I said I'm going to be in charge, that it stops at my desk, we will deal with it decisively. Insecurity, people will say, so how are you going to deal with it? You need to overhaul the entire security architecture. Ensure that it is put in place aggressively, including having multi-level policing, federal, state, community. Train them properly, equip them properly, and provide them with modern gadgets. It is there. You cannot tell me today that anybody can say that somebody is kidnapped, kept somewhere, and they're using phone to negotiate with his family. In this time and age, if he's sick, they even invite doctor to go and treat him, but police doesn't know where they are. Forget it. I'm not going to take that. For one day, go and check what I did with security in Anambra State. Go and ask people. And I made sure that all communities in Anambra State, no single community in Anambra State, everyone had community security system paid from the office of the governor. We provided every community vehicle, a pickup vehicle, brand new, with gadgets for security purpose. No state in this country had done that. Every community, I didn't say police, army. We provided police, we provided army, but every single community. And I can assure you, we will do exactly that, because at the heart of whatever we're going through today is security. and it must be decisively dealt with. On cost of assets that my sister mentioned, we're going to have asset registry. These are some of the things we want to deal with as quickly as possible. So we know the assets of the country and ensure that they're all put into production. Remember that I said we're going to move it from consumption to production. All assets must be productive. No asset will again, and I can tell you to make it productive, we are going to remove it from government to private sector driven. I'm not talking about transactional private sector driven, genuine private sector driven. Cost of governance, I don't need to tell you more about cost of governance, except to go and verify what happened in Anambra State. That is all I can tell you. I have an allergy for waste. As a person. And the same thing will apply in government. So, when it comes to issue oil theft, I've said it before, there's no way under my watch we will not find solution to oil theft. It's impossible. Even when we talked about what ASU is demanding, that everybody is asking for money. ASU asked, it was 2009, almost 13 years ago, that this agreement was reached by government. And I know it was about 1.3 trillion, out of which Jonathan's government paid 200 billion, remaining 1.1 billion, 1.1 trillion. Let's say that is the situation. The waste, the stealing, would have paid that since. With effortless ease. Look at our oil theft. At a time we critically need every single resources. In July, we are the only country in the world that is not meeting our OPEC production, except Venezuela, because of sanctions. In July, you know, if our production was 1,083,000. So in July, we have 717 shortage daily. Multiplied by 31 days is 22,227,000 barrels. On the average pricing of oil in July, it is 110. So we lost $2,445,000,000 in 1 month. Even like you said about their rate, which I mentioned when I talk about rates, the official rate, which you said is not available, is 410. The real rate is 690. So if you put 690 and 5 and 410 is 1,100. Let's use the average, 550. If you multiply $2,445,000,000 with 550, it will give you 1,344,750,000,000 naira. And we are still owing, and we cannot, and we are owing ASU 1.1 trillion. 1 month stealing. It can't continue. In month of August, it became worse. Our oil supply in month of August went down to 975. So for month of August, we are losing 825 barrels per day. 825,000 a day. Multiply by 31 days of August. It will give you 25 million 652,500. That's what we do. 25 million. Throughout the month of August, oil sold for 100 million. For 100 naira. $100, sorry. $100 throughout that month. So in the month of August, we lost another $2.5 billion. Multiply it again by 550. It's about 1.4 trillion. It can't continue. It is official stealing. We will deal with it decisively. Even if it means having to, why will government be borrowing money when somebody is here cutting away money? How? Duty waiver. I can assure you that under my watch, all duty waiver, if at all is going to happen, must be clearly defined to impact positively on the people. Not for anybody's benefit, no matter who. You must pay the duty. If you're not going to pay it, it is as a result of that fact that we are bringing in this for the purposes of the people. Like maybe health equipment. So we know we're going to put it not in presidential clinic, but in Jarak clinic. We will ensure that. So the two waivers is this on exchange rate, which you've mentioned, because people have asked questions, how do you control exchange rate? Exchange rate today, as you know, the greatest impact of exchange rate in our system is fiscal recklessness. Just like our inflation. Can deal with it in two items. It's fiscal recklessness because what you're doing, expensive money, you're printing money to pay for subsidy. If you remove that and remove borrowing for consumption, you stabilize and aggressively going to what I said, moving the country from consumption to production, you stabilize your rate. It's happening with every country. I've said it before. How could a country like Nigeria, with 923,000 square kilometers of land, 200 plus million people, total export last year, even using their own rate, let me now use official rate, is $47 billion. It is unacceptable. Our comparative states I use every day is Vietnam. Total land space is 331,000 square kilometers. 100 million people. So they live on 1/3 of our land, half of our population. Their export last year is nearly $400 billion. And what did they export? Manufactured goods. So what are we doing here? Malaysia, living again on 329,000 square kilometers of land. 1/3 of our land, 30 million people, which is 50% of our population. Total export last year is about 290 million. And we are doing 400 and something. 447, we are doing 47 billion. The list is, you can go on and on and on. A tiny country like Israel, 22,000 square kilometers, which is, we are 923. So if we give them 23, we still have 900. And 9 million people, we are about 100 and something. If you remove their 9, we are still 200. Total export last year is $59.8 billion. They even did always to wise us. It cannot continue. The list is endless. And that's why I said, if you do that, deal with issues of physical recklessness, you bring your rates under control. We'll deal with it when we go further with other questions. Thank you very much. I said it even in CNN. One is that 50% of the subsidy is corruption. That will be dealt with decisively. Two is that you aggressively start immediately the issue of any way you can to ensure local refining through modular, through all forms of this, and ensure simply that those in private sector delivery, not government, private sector supporting them, when you remove it, you're going to have that resources to be able to support private sector-led corporations or individuals that want to go into that field, support them and ensure that the finance are put in as quickly as possible. We are oil producing country. Supply them crude in naira. They refine it for domestic consumption. I've said before, we have to stop dollarization of our economy, especially the domestic economy. Under my watch, the emphasis on dollar, if you must operate here, you must charge naira. If you want to charge dollar, you wait and meet us in international space. But here, no dollar charge and no dollar expenditure for government again. We will deal with dollar, we will use it to engage other countries, we use it to do everything. But here, we've seen where that have led us, where airlines charge Nigerians more than they charge from other countries. It will not happen under my watch. What you charge in A is what you charge here, or you can't, you go. If we are going to trek to your country, we trek. Because we have to deal with that, all those issues. So I assure you, subsidy will not be there. And when you remove subsidy, what does subsidy do today? Subsidy is one of those things that are impacting today in your inflation. Because you have huge money being thrown, expansion of money to supply in the system to deal with deficit budgeting of paying for subsidy. You need to remove it. If you remove security today, if you deal with security today, and your farmers go back to farm, and food prices come down, you remove subsidy and deal with corruption, your inflation will come down. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Come and present my plans. And I can remember calling the DG and say, DG, I don't want to present my plans because it is easy for me to sit down and get some experts, which are all over the place, to write something that I'm going to come and present. It's easy for me to also allow people, because every time now and then, people say, let your spokespeople speak. I say, no. This time around, we want the candidate to speak. Everybody here is taking what I'm saying. So I don't want to go in there and start saying what I saw when I came in. We're about to hire the next chief executive of this company called Nigeria. And that chief executive must come to interview personally. It must present itself to Nigerians. That's what we're doing. And that is why people say it's going around everywhere. I'm going around to Nigerians. So when you talk about institutional instability, and let me assure you, the government I will be in charge will not be supply driven. It will be demand driven. I'm going to come to this chamber to know what they want. It is about the people. It's not about you. Throughout my 8 years of being governor in Anambra State, our plan, budgeting, everything is demand driven. It was the young girls, young boys in secondary school. When I gave all the senior prefects my phone number, they had demanded they want computer for their schools. And I supplied it. They demanded they want cars. I supplied it. Everything they demanded was what I provided. That's governance. It is not about me. All institutions of government will be respected. I remember I said we will change government from being public sector led to private sector led. So we'll consult the private sector. We will listen to them on a daily basis. We will draw and ensure that we come out with deliverables that are measurable, visible and measurable. The new driver of this vehicle must be competent, must know where and agree where this vehicle is going to. Without the schools, he's not going to tell us, well, when he entered, he found out that the key is not working. No excuse. The job of the leader is to prefer solutions, not to start giving excuses. So I assure you that institutional instability will not come. That's why I said certainty of policy, certainty of this. There will be law and order. So if you look at what I said there will be security of life and property. There will be rule of law. There will be law and order, which I will respect. That I'm the first person who will respect it and ensure that it is there, and others will follow it up. Subject yourself to international watchdog. My sister, it won't be international. I subject myself to Nigerians. I assure you, my sister, I've been through this. It's not the first time I'm going to be through it. They said if you manage small, they'll give you big. As governor of Anambra State, I've made promises. And I can tell you, anybody who tells you that he went in there and things changed or something happened, no, it's not true. He went in there and brought out his true character. He went out there and brought his true self. If you were determined with what you're going to do, no matter where you find yourself, you will do it. You do what is right. And I assure you, and let me make it categorical for Nigerian youth, hold me responsible. Hold me accountable. I want Nigerians to hold me responsible and accountable. If they do not start seeing visible, measurable changes, if I'm the president of this country, I won't waste their time. There's no time to waste. We have one of the most energetic, pool, and talented young people that if you train them and put resources in their hand, they will change the world. And I will not waste their time. And I assure you, in addition to what you said, my sister, I want you to be one of those watchdogs. So you will know. I've taken your name, you will be one of those, so you will know that you took notes and people taped what I'm saying. That we are not going to go there and have issue of corruption. Said it before. If the principal person is not corrupt, his wife and children and those around him are not part of it, you reduce it by 70%. Quote me anywhere. And remember, if you were talking about liquidity issues, if you have a country that is secured, and you deal with intangible assets of rule of law, law and order, deal with issues, the greater environment, deal with corruption, there's money all over the world. They will throw money at you. Once they are sure that the person who is managing the public resources is a person of integrity. Because the problem we have with corruption, and when they want to measure it, it is corruption perception index is measured on management of public resource. It's not about any other thing. It's not about Yahoo boys. One thing is measurement. Management of the one we own. So most times we abandon where we're supposed to concentrate and once they are sure that the leader does not appropriate public resource to himself, does not use it for his own influence, investments will come. And when you have investments, you create jobs, and you have revenue to work. That's what other countries are doing. Hope of the youth is the same thing I've said. The youth, I say to you every day, not just that, you'll be involved. I came here with even the youth. Where are those people I came with? They are here. All these people, none of them. You can stand up. These three, I'm sure, I came with. I'm sure. Look at it. This is our candidate for Lagos State for governor. He's 38 years. He's 38 years old. MIT graduate. The three that are here are all first-class people. All of them are under 40. I can't disappoint them. I won't waste their time. I was telling them when we are coming here that this job, they remember what I told them, that is the time we put retirement age to it. So I will not let them down. And I assure you, it is critical, it is important, we deal with it. Thank you. American debt today is over 80% of our GDP. The second country is China. They are owing over 50% of their GDP. The third country is even more compounded, is Japan. They are owing 230% of their GDP. The difference, even Norway, with 1.4 trillion sovereign wealth fund, is owing. Singapore, that we like to cite Lim Kuan Yew, is owing over 130% of their GDP. So the difference is that if you borrow for consumption, you have a problem. If you borrow for investment, your economy will grow. The reason why things are not working here is that we borrowed for consumption. You threw away the money. So debt is a component of development. But debt must be used efficiently and effectively for a purpose that will bring value. You don't just borrow money and throw it away and then come back. That is why you're even having a problem servicing the debt in the first place. Because the money you borrowed had been thrown away. If it was invested, what you get for an investment is what you use to service the debts. And I've shown countries after countries. Third world countries, I'm not comparing us with countries of this thing. I've always shown an example using Bangladesh, a very poor country. Sorry to use it. If they hear it today, they'll say, what is this man talking? But I can tell you, when I went to Bangladesh, you will run away. Because we are far ahead. Countries we are better than. South Korea today is in the 80s, it was people, Kalu was the person who led World Bank turnaround of South Korea. So many other countries. I can show you countries that we are far ahead. But in 2010, I went to Bangladesh as a governor because I wanted to go and study what they are doing with micro businesses. I went there, the first thing I saw is to look at it. What is their GDP? About 115 billion dollars. Their debt was $45 billion. Their per capita was $747 in 2010. Go and check Nigeria in 2010. Our GDP was 375. Our per capita was $225. Our debt then was about 10% of our GDP. You can go and check it. Today, our debt is now about 30% of our GDP, which means we have tripled it. And our per capita is 1,908. So we lost 11% of our per capita. The same Bangladesh today, their per capita is 2,050. In fact, it's 2,100 now. So they've tripled their own. Our own went south. That because the money you borrowed, you threw it away. Their GDP have grown to 300 and something. Their debt have also increased by 3 times what it was then, but they've invested it. It is what you use the money to do that makes the difference. There's nothing wrong in borrowing. We will, first is that under my watch, we will borrow for investment. We are not going to borrow for consumption. And there are things you can do, which is what my sister is doing, cut the cost of governance, remove physical recklessness. And you don't need to borrow as much as you're borrowing today.